Our tall tale begins with, oh my, well, it begins with the beginning of life, birth. Lara Lorvan here gives birth to a healthy baby boy. Understand though, we're not on Earth, but on planet Krypton. In some council room, Jor-El tries to convince the council members their homeworld is doomed, and he needs the control of the Klds to ensure the survival of their race. That's until this little shindig is crashed by General Drew Zod. One of them speaks out, but she's disintegrated. He holds the surviving councilmen in trial, while El tries to talk Zod out of it, but he's in prison instead. And he breaks free 2 seconds later, contacts his wife to prepare for launch. El then sees the war and ruin his planet is going through, so he makes his way to the Codex. There he swims and steals it away. He's apprehended, but he gets away, flying on top of his winged buddy Haraka. He arrives at the launch pad, where Lara has found a suitable world for their newborn to live in, Earth. Lara's having second thoughts about sending their baby away, but Jor-El reassures his survival.
We'll never get to see him walk.
Then he uploads the codex into the baby and a key. They bid him farewell as he's loaded into the ship. Jor-El suits up when Zod and his cronies arrive. Zod encounters Jor-El and he knows El stole the codex, so he wants it back. El turns the other cheek and says they had Krypton's first natural-born son in centuries. Zod's enraged and orders the pod's destruction, but Jor-El fires a few rounds and tussles with him. Zod is subdued, so Lara launches the pod. Zod can't believe what happened, so he stabs Jor-El. Now he's asking where the pod's headed, but Lara says her son Kal-El is beyond his reach. He orders the destruction of that pod.
Bring that ship down.
But the local authorities stop Zod's mutiny. There's a trial by the council and he's sentenced for a really long time in prison. He's given the last few words, where he calls the council a pack of fools and vows to Lara that he'll find Kal-El. Those prison pods look weird and oddly familiar, but then they're sent away to what is known as the Phantom Zone. After that, Krypton begins to explode, and I don't know why they don't escape to the Phantom Zone. Oh well. The planet goes boom. Kal's pod survives, and it crashes on a farm on Earth. Don't bother because it's suddenly fish. Well, fishermen to be precise. Some newbie almost gets squashed by a fishing cage. Then the captain announces an oil rig is under fire. Some men are still trapped inside, but oh well. That's until the newbie goes in, gets the remaining workers out to a helipad so they can get rescued. The oil tower collapses and the newbie is left to hold up the tower until the helicopter can get away. The helo escapes, but the newbie's left to be crushed and blown up by the rest of the destruction of the former oil rig. He floats and remembers his younger days in school, but he seems to be really struggling with his super senses and experiences a nervous breakdown. He's hiding in the janitor's closet and shuts himself in. Not to mention he can hear how everyone says he's a freak. His mom convinces him to make himself calm and focus. This helps his sense ease up. Then, Clark Kent, the human identity of Kal-El, wakes up to some humpback whales. He makes it to shore, steals some clothes and walks away. Get ready for flashback number 2. This is when Clark was in a school bus and some knob fathead bullies him, but then the bus's tires pop out. The bus goes overboard and sinks in the river. That's until Clark saves their ungrateful tushies, including the bullies. The mom of the bully comes over to Clark's parents later to express what her son saw. Of course, Clark's dad gives him a bit of a scolding, but really didn't have a choice. It was either that or Davy Jones's locker. Eventually, his dad has to give up the trust and shows him the ship Clark arrived in as a baby. His dad even gives him the little alien Krypton key. Clark is bewildered by this revelation, so now he wants to find out why he was sent to Earth. Alright, back to reality, and Clark's working at a diner for greasy truckers, which one of them gets inappropriately touchy. Clark tries to stop him, but this one degenerate pours beer all over him. If it was Homelander, you'd be red mist by now. Lucky for you, he's not. Or maybe he is, because the trucker finds his truck later violated by several giant logs. Somewhere else, Lois Lane, a reporter for the Daily Planet, arrives at an icy army base, only to be shown that the army has found something deep beneath the ice. The ice surrounding whatever's down there is also about 20,000 years old. Army reports are done, so Miss Lane grabs her gear and takes pictures, only for one of the workers to be spotted by her. She secretly follows through the narrow crevices until she finds a hole. Turns out Clark dug that hole with his heat vision. The ship is revealed, but Lois is not too far behind. Clark enters the ship and a slot console manifests right in front of him. Then some kind of drone tries to harass him, but he fully presses his key inside and it stops. He follows a familiar-looking man through the halls. Clark sees some pods and one of them has a guy already past his time. Lois passes the same drone and tries to take a photo of it, but it whips her badly. Clark hears her scream, so he's rushing and saves the idiot journalist. Too bad she has a deep ouchie. So Clark cauterizes her and trust me, it's really painful. Back at the Army research base, the ground shakes so hard, it seems like the Kryptonian ship is taking off. Lois reports everything that happened to her during the visit, and even writes about her mysterious rescuer. Perry White, her editor and boss, isn't too happy with this alien's Amagus mumbo-jumbo. He won't print it, so Lois turns to Redditor Woodburn to leak it for her, so that her mystery man will catch her eyes. Speaking of mystery men, Clark's still at the ship and he meets Jor-El, his real dad. Clark doesn't know who he is though, so he makes it apparent. Clark finds out his real name, and his father gives a recap on— well, that's my job. Well, basically, this is one of my scout ships from Krypton to colonize other empty worlds. It was the Golden Age, until they exhausted the natural resources, and Zod started a coup. Krypton became too dictating on what the artificial children should be, which Cal's parents were a product of. Here comes the symbol of House L, embodying hope. Clark dons the briefless outfit and steps out into the cold. There, with baby steps, he practices his flight. He gets it right, and he crashes and burns. Don't worry, he gets it right the very next try and even breaks the sound barrier. Soon he sets to fly near the curvature of the Earth. Somewhere and somehow, Lois is busy doxing Clark, aka her mystery man. Soon the pieces come together, and Lois even finds Clark's old bully. That leads her to Clark's mother, Martha Kent. Say her first name twice and Batman heals. Lois visits Jonathan Kent's grave, and there she meets Clark. Lois wants to tell his story, but Clark wants to disappear. Too bad the only real way to disappear is to totally stop helping people, which isn't good for a Boy Scout like Clark. Teen Clark and Jonathan are driving down the road, having a heated argument. A freak tornado whips up and Clark helps his mom, while Jonathan goes back for the dog. The dog breaks loose, but Jonathan is left crippled. Clark was about to go, but Jonathan signals no and chooses to let his son keep his secret. Lois goes back to the office, and Perry's not liking that she leaked the story, but she says she's going to drop it anyways. Perry gives her a 2-week suspension with no pay. Well, 3 weeks. Someplace familiar, Clark comes home to his mom and she welcomes him with open arms. She warns Clark about Lois, but she's good in his book. Clark then breaks the news that he finally found where he came from. Martha's happy, but she's just worried about Clark.
Not going anywhere, Mom.
Let's go to a military base because here's General Swanwick, and he got the reports of an alien ship that looks Kryptonian. Meanwhile, at Lois's office, the UFO finally makes it to the news. Clark and Martha see it from their home. Then a large blackout occurs. Soon the TVs start playing cryptic messages of "You're not alone," which funnily enough gets translated throughout the world. Must be that newfangled Kryptonian tech called Google Translate. Soon Zod personally does introduce himself, and he's trying to look for Clark. Zod also says he surrenders within 24 hours, or there's gonna be fireworks. Soon the local news points fingers at Lois Lane for knowing who and where Kal-El is. Even the FBI gets up in her jimmies.
I gotta go.
Back to Clark in a church. Kal's being bullied by some stumps, but just saying, if he was Homelander, there'd be a sea of red by now.
Is that all you got?
His ex-bully, now his friend, helps him up, and his dad checks to see if he's alright. He wanted to hit the kid, and let's be honest, we wanted that guy to be red paste, but he didn't. Self-control is Superman's strongest power. Flashback over, and Clark talks to a preacher. He just comes clean to him. He doesn't trust both Zod and the people on Earth, so he follows the preacher's advice, a leap of faith. Specifically showing up while at gunpoint by one of the world's strongest militaries. He makes a deal with General Swanwick to free Lois and speak to her in exchange for his surrender. So they handcuff him, and he talks to Lois about the S on his chest, which stood for hope in Krypton, but now it stands for Oh, look, it's Dr. Emil Hamilton, trying to introduce himself, but Clark's X-ray vision has it covered. Clark makes it clear, by breaking the handcuffs easily, that he doesn't want to be controlled, but he isn't the enemy. He agrees with the general that he should be handed over to Zod. Outside, Supes thanks Lois for believing in him. Then he asks her to go.
You should leave now.
An alien ship arrives with 2 faceless soldiers coming out. One of them introduces herself as Feora Ul, and there seems to be an additional demand from Zod for Lois to come with. At first, the army doesn't take too kindly to this, but she's willing to go in the end.
I'll go.
The ship leaves with their designated people, and Feora offers Lois a breather since Lois can't breathe in outer space. The small ship arrives at Zod's great vessel. Surprisingly, General Zod greets Clark with open arms, but then he starts to get sick on the spot. Zod says the Kryptonian ship's atmosphere is causing this, since Clark never adapted to Kryptonian habits. Well, he wakes up in a dreamlike state where Zod tells him, flashback number 5, once the rock blew up, they were free. Which is really dumb how the rest of the Kryptonians didn't escape to the Phantom Zone. They fixed their ship with scraps and made their way to Kryptonian outposts. Newsflash, all the outposts bit the dust. Soon they salvaged enough supplies to survive, and they were led to Earth once Clark activated the scout ship his dad was in. Zod tells him about the Codex and his plans to take Earth to rebirth Krypton. This means extinguishing the human race though.
No. Zod.
Wonder Boy wakes up, only to find himself in a kinky situation. What's not so kinky is that Zod admits to game-ending Clark's father. Zod makes it clear he'll do whatever it takes to achieve his mission. 2 ships from Zod's ship suddenly go to Earth. One of Zod's lackeys takes Clark's blood, then Lois gets imprisoned. She still had Clark's Kryptonian key, so she slots it in, and a visit from Jor-El is in order. He says he can help since he can modify the ship's atmosphere to human compatibility. He can also teach her to take them back to the Phantom Zone. The two bust out and yoink a Kryptonian gung along the way. While Clark gets freed thanks to the ship's atmosphere being adjusted, Jor-El guides Lois to an escape pod, where she escapes. El then appears before his son and confirms that what Zod said about the Codex is true.
You can save all of them.
Clark then sees Lois's ship crashing, but he saves her just in time. Clark suddenly zooms off, because he probably senses his mother getting interrogated by Zod and his cronies since they're looking for that Codex. Feora can't find the Codex from Clark's arrival ship, so Zod gets angry. Well, Clark's angry too, and he beats him stiff. Zod's suit gets damaged in the process, so his senses get confused in Earth's atmosphere. Zod's squirming, but his cronies recover him. So Soups is left to face Feora and her dunce instead. The Air Force tries to close in into the Kryptonians, but they just end up giving him a little push. Feora's lackey takes one A-10 down, and then Superman goes for Feora. They tussle at the local IHOP. Well, weird place to fight, but they bounce from one place to another, until her lackey catches up and tag teams. Soups breaks free with some good old heat vision, but soon the idiot army tries to get themselves killed. No idea if the army realizes they're just wasting resources, because while Soups saves one, Feora wastes the lot of them. Soups then distracts the lackey, then saves one of the soldiers from Feora. Then Superman suddenly gets maimed by a burning train. Feora's suit gets damaged, so both of them get an evac. Soups recovers. Then the local colonel declares him an ally. Clark checks to see if his mom's alright. Then Lois comes in to say that she knows how to stop him. Back at Zod's ship, they figure out the Codex is bonded to Clark himself. Knowing they can go all out, Zod releases a ship called the World Engine. The main ship also descends, and all of this is picked up by the military. Zod's ship makes landfall in an American city, and then emits a bright laser. Zod says initiate.
Initiate.
And both ships cause mass chaos. The Doctor thinks they're turning the Earth into Krypton, and if it keeps up, they'll all be wiped. The General gets a wind of Superman coming in. The General meets Lois and Superman, and they introduce a plan to bomb Zod's ship with Superman's baby cradle, and it should stop it.
It's a viable plan.
The General gives the green light and Superman zips off at Mach speeds. Zod orders Feora to take command, as he has to pay someone a visit. He makes landfall at the scout ship, already adapted to Earth's atmosphere. Once he's inside and inserts the key, Jor-El tries to stop him, but Zod's authority takes over. Clark's struggling with the environment that the World Engine in the Indian Ocean is making, while the army takes Zod's ship. Superman gets bodied by the World Engine's defenses, while the Air Force is totally being wiped by the gravity field of Zod's ship. Chaos is everywhere, making Jor-El's point stronger. His point to Zod is that they can coexist, but Zod isn't having it. Then he shuts down his digital consciousness. Speaking of which, Clark isn't doing well with the World Engine, and so are the people of America stuck underneath the rubble from Zod's destruction. Soups gets in the middle of a gravity laser of the World Engine and adapts to its power, finally mustering his strength and piercing through it. The terraforming stops, so this gives the Air Force the opening they need. Superman wakes amidst the yellow sun, while Lois and the Air Force prepare to bomb Zod's ship with Superman's ship, but there's something wrong. Their problems get worse as Zod is on their tail. Superman's all about amazing timing, as he stops them from getting blasted. as he was about to melt everything. Zod begs him not to as it contains Krypton's future. Up until he goes full Homelander. Faora comes to her leader's aid to stop the plane from dropping the ship, but the Doctor figures it out and arms the ship. Just as Faora was about to stop the pilot, he nosedives the plane into Zod's ship. Superman's ship warps Zod's ship back into the Phantom Zone. Lois falls from grace though. More great timing from Clark as he zips and grabs Lois before she plummets to the Earth. He sets her down gently in front of the Daily Planet survivors. Then cue predictable kissing scene. Zod is in shambles because he's holding the destroyed ashes of what could have been Krypton. He's blaming Superman for the eradication of their race and chose the humans over Krypton. Think fast, Superman. That's the first taste because Zod vows to eradicate them all just as Clark did to him.
I'm going to make them suffer, Cal.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's start the beginning of the end. They both clash massively. Then Zod busts out his newly acquired heat vision. Soon they exchange blows in front of a destroyed LexCorp tanker. Good foreshadowing. Zod says only one of them will survive, so they destroy a few buildings here and there. And Zod is fully adapted now, so he takes off the armor and they take to the skies. Their punches are devastating. Destruction follows wherever they punch to. The extent of their strengths even take the fight to space and then back to Earth as they violently crash towards the city. The two combatants land at the city's train station, where Superman has Zod in a headlock. Seeing some people in fear, Zod tries to melt them with his heat vision. Superman begs Zod to stop, but Zod's ruthless. Now Superman has no choice but to end him. Of course, Clark regrets this decision immediately. Lois comforts him at this moment of weakness. Some time passes, and the General takes a relaxing drive. That's until a Predator drone crashed in front of his car. Superman isn't too happy about the NSA's plan to dox him. Back at Kansas, Clark and Martha take a visit into Jonathan's grave, where the last flashback plays. It's a vivid memory of Kid Clark playing around with his dog while wearing a cape. Flashback over, and Martha asks where Clark will work incognito. Simple, the Daily Planet. There he meets Lois once again. The day was saved, and that was it for Man of Steel. What'd you think about this super heroic movie? Go ahead and drop those comments below using the hashtag #CinemaRecap. This was Man of Steel by DC Entertainment, starring Henry Cavill, Michael Shannon, and Russell Crowe. Until that next doomsday, see you later.